Captain Marcus Chen had seen many strange things during his 20 years of deep space exploration, but nothing quite like the sight before him. The destroyed alien vessel floated silently in the void, its hull cracked open like an egg. Emergency lights flickered weakly through the debris field, casting eerie shadows across the wreckage. "Sir, we're picking up a life sign," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the sensor station. "It's faint, but definitely there." Marcus gripped the armrest of his command chair. The Terran exploration ship, Horizon's Edge, had been investigating reports of unknown vessels in this sector when they stumbled upon the crash site. Whatever had happened here was recent. The metal was still warm and oxygen was still leaking from the broken hull. "Prep a rescue team," Marcus ordered. "Full environmental suits. We don't know what we're dealing with." 30 minutes later, Marcus found himself floating through the alien corridor, his magnetic boots clicking against the strange metal flooring. The architecture was unlike anything in the human databases. Curved walls seemed to flow like water, and soft bioluminescent strips provided dim lighting. The air, what little remained, smelled of ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. "Life sign is stronger now, Captain," came Kim's voice through his comm. "2 sections ahead behind what looks like a sealed door." Marcus and his team pushed forward through the wreckage. Debris floated everywhere, and several times they had to carefully move aside what appeared to be alien bodies. The beings were humanoid but taller, with elongated limbs and pale blue skin. Their faces were serene, almost peaceful, as if they had accepted their fate. When they reached the sealed door, Marcus ran his scanner over the surface. The readings showed a small chamber beyond, still pressurized with breathable atmosphere. His engineering officer, Rodriguez, worked quickly to override the door's locking mechanism. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Marcus stepped inside. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. A small figure huddled in the corner of what appeared to be a child's room. Toys floated in zero gravity around the space, along with colorful books and what looked like art supplies. The figure was clearly young, perhaps equivalent to a human 8-year-old, with the same pale blue skin as the adults, but smaller, more delicate features. Large, dark eyes stared at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, removing his helmet to show his human face. "We're here to help." The child flinched at first, then slowly moved closer. She was wearing what looked like a school uniform, now torn and dirty from the crash. In her small hands, she clutched a stuffed animal that resembled a cross between a rabbit and a cat. Marcus knelt down to her level and held out his hand. "My name is Marcus. What's yours?" The child stared at him for a long moment, then spoke in a voice like wind chimes. The words were melodic but completely alien to his ears. His universal translator, however, picked up the meaning immediately. "My name is Zara," she whispered. "Are my parents okay?" Marcus felt his heart sink. The scan of the ship had been thorough. There were no other survivors. He looked into those large, trusting eyes and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "We're going to take care of you, Zara," he said gently. "You're safe now." The journey back to Earth took 3 months. During that time, Marcus found himself spending more and more time with the young alien girl. Zara was remarkably resilient. She learned basic English within weeks, her advanced alien brain processing the language patterns with incredible speed. She was curious about everything, asking endless questions about human culture, Earth, and why the stars looked different from the observation deck. Marcus had lost his own wife and daughter in a transport accident 5 years earlier. The pain had driven him to seek solace in the lonely expanses of space exploration. But something about Zara's presence began to heal wounds he thought would never close. "Why do humans eat cooked food?" she asked one day during dinner in the ship's mess hall. She was carefully examining a piece of synthesized chicken, turning it over with her fork. Heat makes it safer, Marcus explained. It kills harmful bacteria. My people absorb nutrients directly from plants, Zara said. We touch the leaves and take what we need. But this tastes interesting. The crew had adopted Zara as their unofficial mascot. She spent her days learning human customs, playing games with the officers, and even helping with simple maintenance tasks. Her alien physiology gave her advantages. She could see in near-total darkness, her hearing was incredibly acute. And she had an intuitive understanding of energy patterns that made her surprisingly good at diagnosing technical problems. But it was with Marcus that she formed her strongest bond. She would often curl up next to him during movie nights, her strange alien features relaxing into something resembling contentment. When she had nightmares about the crash, she would come to his quarters, and he would read her human fairy tales until she fell asleep. The social workers are going to want to place her in a specialized facility, Kim warned him one day as they approached Earth. She'll need proper care, education about her own species. Her own species is gone, Marcus replied quietly. The databases show that ship was from the Cathara system. Long-range sensors detected the destruction of their homeworld 6 months ago. Solar instability caused their star to go nova. Zara might be one of the last of her kind. When they reached Earth, Marcus found himself in an endless series of meetings with xenobiologists, child psychologists, government officials, and alien rights advocates. Everyone had an opinion about what should be done with Zara. Some wanted to study her. Others believed she should be raised in isolation to preserve her alien culture. A few suggested she be placed with other refugee species in one of the outer colonies. Through it all, Zara stayed close to Marcus. She was overwhelmed by Earth's bright sun, heavy gravity, and dense atmosphere. The crowds of humans frightened her, and she would often hide behind Marcus when strangers approached. "I want to stay with you," she told him one evening, as they sat in his temporary quarters at the Space Corps headquarters. "You saved me. In my culture, that makes you my guardian." Marcus had been wrestling with the same decision for weeks. He was a career space officer, often away on missions for months at a time. His lifestyle was hardly suitable for raising a child, especially one with such unique needs. But every time he looked at Zara, he remembered the trust in her eyes when he first found her. "What if I'm not good enough?" he asked her. "I've never been a father before." Zara's large eyes seemed to see right through him. "My parents taught me that family isn't about blood or species. It's about love and protection and choosing to be together. You've already been my father for months." The adoption process took nearly a year. Marcus had to undergo psychological evaluations, provide detailed plans for Zara's education and medical care, and convince a panel of judges that a human could adequately raise an alien child. But in the end, Zara's own testimony proved decisive. She spoke clearly about her choice, her comfort with human culture, and her desire to honor her birth parents by building a new life rather than dwelling on loss. Marcus retired from active space duty and accepted a position as director of the Terra Nova Colony's exploration program. It was still space-related work, but it kept him planetside most of the time. He and Zara settled into a comfortable routine in a small house on the colony's outskirts. Zara excelled in school. Her alien intellect allowed her to absorb information at an incredible rate, and she often helped her human classmates with difficult subjects. She became particularly interested in botany, spending hours in the colony's gardens, learning about earth plants and how they differed from the flora of her destroyed home world. But she also embraced human traditions with enthusiasm. She learned to ride a bicycle, developed a love for ice cream, and became obsessed with human music. Marcus often found her humming melodies that blended human tunes with the wind chime quality of her native language. Years passed peacefully. Zara grew from a frightened child into a confident teenager. She was still obviously alien, Her pale blue skin, elongated limbs, and large eyes made her stand out anywhere she went, but she carried herself with the assurance of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. Marcus aged too, but gracefully. The responsibilities of fatherhood had given him purpose he hadn't realized he was missing. Watching Zara discover the universe through human eyes while maintaining her alien perspective had been the greatest adventure of his life. On her 16th birthday, by human reckoning, Zara surprised him with a gift. She had been working secretly with the colony's artists to create a memorial garden for her birth parents. Native plants from dozens of worlds grew in careful harmony, creating a living tribute to the diversity of species that had welcomed humanity into the galactic community. "They would have liked you," she told Marcus as they stood together in the garden's center. "You have the same kindness they did." Marcus put his arm around his adopted daughter's shoulders, marveling at how tall she had grown. "I wish I could have met them." "You did," Zara said simply. "Every time you protected me, every time you listened to my stories about home, every time you let me be both alien and human, you were honoring who they raised me to be." That night, Marcus went to bed feeling more content than he had in years. Zara was thriving, the colony was prosperous, and the future seemed full of possibilities. He had no way of knowing that everything was about to change. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later, when long-range sensors detected an unknown vessel approaching the Terra Nova system. It was large, sleek, and of a design that matched no known species in the human database, but Zara recognized it immediately. "That's a Cathara ship," she whispered, her face going pale as she stared at the sensor readings. "But that's impossible." "They're all dead." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. For 16 years, he and Zara had believed she was alone in the universe, the last of her kind. They had built their family on that foundation, created their life together in the shadow of that loss. But as the alien vessel drew closer, Marcus realized that everything they thought they knew was about to be challenged. The ship's communications array was already broadcasting on Cathara frequencies, and the message, when translated, was simple but devastating. "This is Matriarch Velana of the Cathara Resistance Fleet. We have come to retrieve our lost daughter." The Cathara ship landed in Terra Nova's main spaceport 3 days after first contact. Marcus stood beside Zara on the observation platform, watching as the elegant vessel settled onto the landing pad with barely a whisper of displaced air. The ship was beautiful in an organic way that human technology rarely achieved, its hull seeming to flow like captured water frozen in mid-motion. Zara's hand found his, her long fingers intertwining with his human ones. She was trembling slightly, though whether from excitement or fear, Marcus couldn't tell. "What if they don't like who I've become?" she whispered. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "You've become exactly who you were meant to be. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about." The ship's boarding ramp extended with a soft, musical tone, and 3 figures emerged. Even from a distance, Marcus could see they were Cathara like Zara, but taller and more imposing. They moved with fluid grace, their pale blue skin gleaming in the colony's artificial lighting. The one in the center wore what appeared to be ceremonial robes that shifted color as she walked. "The one in front is a matriarch," Zara said quietly. "Her robes mark her as high nobility, and the way she moves, she's someone accustomed to absolute authority." A delegation from the colonial government met the aliens at the landing ramp, but Marcus could see even from their elevated position that the Cathara showed little interest in human protocols. The matriarch spoke briefly with the governor, then her gaze swept upward to the observation platform. Even across the distance, Marcus felt the weight of her attention. "She knows where I am," Zara said with certainty. "Cathara mothers can sense their children across vast distances. If she's really my birth mother, She would have felt my presence the moment their ship entered the system. An hour later, Marcus and Zara sat in the governor's conference room, waiting. The colonial officials had been polite but firm about arranging this meeting, though Marcus suspected they had little choice in the matter. When dealing with an advanced alien species making claims about one of their residents, diplomacy became a careful balancing act. The door opened, and the matriarch entered. Marcus had seen alien dignitaries before, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer presence of this being. She was nearly 7 feet tall, with the elongated proportions common to all Cathara, but there was something regal about her that went beyond physical appearance. Her large, dark eyes seemed to hold depths of wisdom and experience that made Marcus feel suddenly very young. Behind her came 2 other Cathara, obviously guards or advisors, their movements precise and watchful. "My daughter," the matriarch said, and her voice was like Zara's, but deeper, more resonant. She spoke in accented English, the words carefully pronounced. "At last, I have found you." Zara stood slowly, her teenage awkwardness falling away as she unconsciously adopted the formal posture Marcus had seen her use only in moments of great stress. "Honored matriarch," she replied in what Marcus recognized as formal Cathara. "You do me great honor with your presence." The matriarch's eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak our language like a child reciting lessons. How much of your heritage have you forgotten?" Marcus felt anger flare in his chest at the criticism, but Zara placed a warning hand on his arm. She switched to English, her voice steady but strained. "I have forgotten nothing, matriarch. I have simply learned new things as well." "Indeed." The matriarch's gaze shifted to Marcus, and he felt as though he were being dissected by a particularly skilled scientist. "You must be the human who stole my child." "I rescued her," Marcus replied calmly, "from the wreckage of what appeared to be the last ship of a dead civilization. A civilization that is very much alive, as you can see." The matriarch moved closer to Zara, reaching out as if to touch her face, then stopping when the girl instinctively pulled back. "My name is Veliana. I am your birth mother, child. You were taken from me 16 years ago during the evacuation of our world." Zara's face had gone pale. "Taken? I wasn't taken. I was saved. My parents died in the crash. The beings you remember as your parents were your guardians," Veliana said gently. "When our sun began to destabilize, we had to evacuate quickly. Some families were separated in the chaos. You were placed with trusted friends, while I helped coordinate the evacuation of our most sacred artifacts. Their ship was supposed to rendezvous with the main fleet, but they never arrived." The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the air circulation system. Marcus watched Zara process this information, seeing the careful world they had built together suddenly become uncertain. "You're saying my entire life has been based on a lie?" Zara asked quietly. "Not a lie," Veliana replied. "A misunderstanding, but one that can now be corrected. I have come to take you home." "This is my home," Zara said, her voice growing stronger. "Earth, this colony, this man who raised me with love and patience, this is where I belong." Veliana's expression hardened. "You belong with your people. You have responsibilities, a destiny that was interrupted by tragedy. The Cathara need you." "What destiny?" Marcus asked, speaking for the first time since the formal introductions. Veliana's gaze shifted to him with obvious reluctance, as if she resented having to explain herself to a human. "Zara is not merely my daughter. She is my heir, the next matriarch of our people. When our world was destroyed, the survivors scattered across dozens of systems. They need unity, leadership, hope for the future. Zara represents the next generation of our species." "I'm 16 years old," Zara protested. "I don't know anything about leading people." You are 16 by human reckoning, Velana corrected. By our measures, you have reached the age of responsibility, and you know more than you realize. Leadership is in your blood, your genetic heritage. The wisdom of countless generations flows through you. Marcus stood up, positioning himself slightly between Velana and Zara. She's still a child. She deserves the right to choose her own future. Humans, Velana said with obvious disdain, always speaking of choice and individual desire. You have no concept of duty, of responsibility to something greater than yourself. You have raised my daughter with these selfish ideas. I've raised her to think for herself, Marcus replied firmly. To value compassion over tradition, understanding over blind obedience. You have raised her as a human, Velana snapped, but she is Cathara. She belongs with her own kind, learning the ways of her people, preparing for the role she was born to fill. Zara stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the tension. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. You're both deciding what's best for me without asking what I want. Both adults turned to look at her, and Marcus saw something in her expression that reminded him of the moment when she first decided to trust him all those years ago in the wreckage of her guardian's ship. I want to know the truth, Zara said carefully. All of it. About my heritage. About what happened to my people. About this destiny you're talking about. But I also want time to decide what that means for me. Velana's expression softened slightly. Of course, child. That is why I am here. To teach you. To help you understand who you truly are. Here? Marcus asked sharply. I will remain on this colony for a period of time, Velana announced, to evaluate my daughter's condition and begin her proper education. When she is ready, she will return with me to take her place among our people. And if she decides she doesn't want to? Marcus challenged. Velana's smile was cold. She will want to. Once she understands what is at stake, what her people have endured, she will make the right choice. The next few weeks were unlike anything Marcus had experienced. Velana established herself in the colony's diplomatic quarters and began what she called Zara's cultural education. Every day after school, Zara would spend hours with her birth mother, learning Cathara history, philosophy, and the complex social structures that governed their scattered civilization. Marcus watched his adopted daughter struggle with the weight of new knowledge. She learned that the Cathara had once been one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, masters of biotechnology and energy manipulation. Their civilization had lasted for thousands of years before their star's unexpected instability forced them into exile. There are maybe 50,000 of us left, Zara told Marcus one evening as they sat together in their garden, scattered across a dozen worlds, most of them barely habitable. They're struggling to maintain their technology, their culture. Some groups have already begun to lose their identity, intermarrying with other species or abandoning Cathara traditions. And Velana thinks you can change that? Marcus asked. Zara nodded slowly. She says I represent hope, the next generation, proof that our people can survive and thrive. As matriarch, I would travel between the scattered communities, providing unity and guidance. That sounds like a heavy burden for someone your age. She says I wouldn't be alone. There would be advisors, teachers, a whole court to support me, and the power that comes with the position would let me really help people. Marcus heard something in her voice, a note of growing interest that made his heart sink. You're starting to believe her. Zara was quiet for a long moment. I'm starting to understand her. Today she showed me recordings from before the evacuation. Our world was beautiful, Marcus. Cities that grew like living things, art that changed with the viewer's emotions, gardens that sang in harmony with the wind. And it's all gone because we couldn't save it. That wasn't your fault, Marcus said gently. But maybe I can prevent it from happening again. To the survivors, I mean. Maybe I can help them find new homes, new ways to preserve what's important about who we are. Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same pain he had experienced when he first realized Zara would eventually grow up and leave him. But this was different. This wasn't a natural progression toward independence. This was losing her to a destiny he could never compete with. "What about your life here?" he asked. "Your friends, your studies, your plans for the future." "I've been thinking about that too," Zara admitted. "Maybe my plans were too small. I was going to study botany, maybe become a terraforming specialist. But that would help a few colonies over a few decades. As matriarch, I could help thousands of people over generations." That night, Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He could feel Zara slipping away from him, drawn toward a heritage and responsibility he couldn't understand or share. Velana was winning, using a combination of guilt, duty, and genuine love to pull Zara back into a world Marcus had never been part of. 3 days later, everything changed again. Marcus was in his office reviewing exploration reports when the emergency alert sounded. Long-range sensors had detected multiple ships approaching the system, and they weren't broadcasting identification codes. The colony's defense coordinator patched into the colony-wide communication system. "All residents should remain in their homes until further notice. We have unidentified vessels approaching, and their intentions are unclear." Marcus immediately headed home, but found the house empty. A quick check showed that Zara was still at her cultural education session with Velana. He headed for the diplomatic quarters at a near run, fear gnawing at his stomach. He found them in Velana's private chambers, both Cathara looking grim as they monitored something on a holographic display. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded. Velana looked up, her expression more serious than he had ever seen it. "The ships approaching your system are hegemony vessels. They've been hunting my people since the evacuation." "Hunting them for what?" "To finish what the dying star started," Velana said coldly. "The hegemony believe the Kithara are too dangerous to be allowed to survive. Our biotechnology, our energy manipulation abilities, they see us as a threat that must be eliminated." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "How many ships?" 12, Zara said quietly. "Military vessels, heavily armed. They've followed Mother's trail here." "I endangered your colony by coming here," Velana admitted. "But I had to find my daughter. I thought we had more time." Marcus's mind raced. "The colony's defenses aren't equipped to handle that kind of attack. We're an exploration outpost, not a military installation." "Which is why we must leave immediately," Velana said, turning to Zara. "Come, daughter. Our ship can outrun theirs if we depart now." But Zara didn't move toward her birth mother. Instead, she moved closer to Marcus. "I won't abandon the colony," she said firmly. "These people are my friends, my family. If the hegemony destroys this place because of me, I'll never forgive myself." Velana's eyes flashed with frustration. "Your responsibility is to our people, not to these humans." "My responsibility," Zara said with quiet dignity, "is to do what's right, and running away while innocent people die is not right." Marcus felt a surge of pride in his adopted daughter, even as the situation grew more desperate by the moment. On the holographic display, the hegemony ships continued their relentless approach. They had perhaps 6 hours before the attack began. The colony's emergency council meeting lasted only 20 minutes, but it felt like hours to Marcus. Governor Harrison sat at the head of the table, her face grim as the defense coordinator outlined their limited options. "Our orbital platforms have enough firepower to handle maybe 3 ships, Commander Torres explained. "Against 12 hegemony dreadnoughts, we might buy ourselves 30 minutes before they're destroyed." "Evacuation?" the governor asked. "Impossible. We have 40,000 civilians and only enough transport capacity for maybe a third of them. And even if we could evacuate everyone, the hegemony ships would just hunt them down in open space." Marcus looked around the table at the faces of people he had worked with for years. They were scared but determined, the kind of frontier spirit that had built colonies like Terra Nova in the first place. But courage alone wouldn't stop 12 military vessels. "There is another option," Velana said from where she stood near the wall. The Kethara matriarch had been granted observer status in the meeting, though several council members clearly resented her presence. "And what would that be?" Governor Harrison asked coldly. "You give me to them," Zara said before her birth mother could respond. "The hegemony isn't here for the colony. They're here for Kethara. If I surrender myself, they'll leave the colony alone." "Absolutely not," Marcus snapped. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself." "It's not sacrifice if it saves 40,000 lives," Zara replied with a calm that frightened him. Velana stepped forward. "My daughter speaks with wisdom, but her plan is flawed. The hegemony doesn't negotiate. They would take her and then destroy the colony anyway, simply to eliminate any evidence of their hunt." "Then what are you suggesting?" Torres asked. Velana was quiet for a moment, seeming to wrestle with something internal. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with reluctant decision. "We fight them, but not with human weapons or human tactics." She gestured, and one of her guards produced a small device that projected a holographic map of the solar system. The approaching hegemony ships showed as red dots, still several hours out, but closing fast. "The Kethara developed certain technologies during our long war with the hegemony," Velana continued. "Biotechnology that can interface with any electronic system, energy manipulation techniques that can disrupt ship functions across vast distances. But these abilities require precise coordination and someone with the genetic capacity to channel them properly." Marcus felt a chill as he realized where this was heading. "You need Zara." "I need my daughter, yes. But I also need your people." Velana's gaze swept around the table. "Humans have something the Kethara lost long ago. You fight not just with weapons, but with hope. You take impossible situations and find ways to win through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender." Governor Harrison leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership," Velana said. "Your ships, your tactics, your human unpredictability, combined with Kethara biotechnology and energy manipulation. It won't be easy, and the risks are enormous, but it's the only way to save both the colony and my daughter." "Mother," Zara said quietly, "if I help with this, if we survive, what happens afterward? Do you still expect me to leave with you?" Velana looked at her daughter for a long moment, and Marcus saw something shift in the alien woman's expression. For the first time since she had arrived, she looked uncertain. "I don't know," she admitted. "Today has shown me that I may have been wrong about many things. Perhaps it's time for the Kethara to learn new ways of thinking about family and duty." The next few hours were a blur of desperate preparation. The colony's small defense fleet consisted of 6 patrol ships and 2 heavy cruisers, barely enough to slow down the approaching hegemony force. But Velana's people worked with human engineers to install Kethara bio-interfaces in the ships, creating hybrid systems that could channel alien abilities through human technology. Marcus found himself assigned to the command ship, the Terra Nova, despite having no formal military rank in the colonial forces. Governor Harrison had insisted he be present, reasoning that if Zara was risking her life for the colony, the man who had raised her should be there to support her. Zara stood at the center of the ship's bridge, her hands placed on a strange, organic-looking console that Velana's technicians had installed. Bioluminescent cables ran from the device to the ship's main computer systems, pulsing with soft blue light that matched the rhythm of Zara's heartbeat. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked her quietly as the final preparations were completed. "No," she admitted. "But I'm sure about protecting the people I care about. That includes everyone on this colony, and it includes the scattered Kethara trying to rebuild their lives." Maybe there's a way to do both. Velana approached them, her ceremonial robes replaced by practical body armor. The bio-interface will amplify your natural abilities, but the strain will be enormous. You've never attempted anything on this scale. Then it's good I have the best teacher, Zara replied, reaching out to take her birth mother's hand, and the best father to keep me grounded. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. I'm proud of you, whatever happens. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace right on schedule, their ships emerging from the void like predators sensing wounded prey. They were sleek, angular vessels designed for one purpose, the efficient elimination of target populations. 12 confirmed hostiles, the tactical officer reported. They're moving into attack formation. Governor Harrison, commanding from the colony's operations center, opened a channel to the hegemony fleet. Unknown vessels, this is Terra Nova Colony. You are in violation of interstellar law. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came back immediately, the voice cold and mechanical through the translation software. This is Hegemony Warfleet Designation 77 Alpha. We are conducting a lawful elimination operation against enemy biotechnology. Surrender the Cathara subjects for processing, and your colony will be spared. Counteroffer, Harrison replied. Leave our system immediately or face the consequences. The hegemony commander's laugh was like grinding metal. Your 8 vessels against our 12 dreadnoughts? This will be over in minutes. But as the hegemony ships moved to attack positions, they discovered that the humans had some surprises prepared. The first surprise came when the supposedly inferior human ships suddenly began moving with impossible coordination. Zara, linked to the bio-interfaces installed in each vessel, could feel the thoughts and intentions of every human pilot. She became a living network, allowing the colonial fleet to act as a single organism. Now, Marcus called out. The human ships scattered in 8 different directions, then suddenly converged on the lead hegemony vessel from multiple angles. But instead of firing conventional weapons, they unleashed something the hegemony had never encountered. Cathara bioenergy channeled through human targeting systems. Streams of blue-white energy, guided by Zara's abilities and Velana's knowledge, struck the hegemony ship's shields. But instead of simply battering them down, the bioenergy began to eat through them like acid, disrupting the fundamental energy patterns that held the defensive systems together. The lead hegemony ship found its shields failing, its weapon systems stuttering as alien energy invaded its computer networks. Impossible! The hegemony commander snarled over the open channel. No known technology can breach our defenses. That's your problem right there, Captain Torres replied from the Terra Nova. You only know what you've seen before. The battle became a deadly dance. The hegemony ships had superior firepower and armor, but the human Cathara hybrid fleet moved like nothing they had ever fought. Ships that should have been destroyed by massive energy blasts seemed to phase out of reality moments before impact, reappearing behind their attackers to strike at vulnerable points. Marcus watched in amazement as Zara coordinated impossibilities. She somehow linked the bioenergy systems to the pilot's intuition, allowing them to anticipate attacks before they were fired and find gaps in enemy defenses that computer analysis said didn't exist. But the strain was enormous. Marcus could see Zara trembling with effort, her pale blue skin beginning to flush darker as the bio-interface drew on her life force to power the incredible abilities. She can't keep this up much longer, Velana warned. The energy drain will kill her. Then we need to end this quickly, Marcus replied. He activated the ship's communication system. All ships focus everything on their command vessel. If we can take out their leader, the others might withdraw. The remaining colonial ships, now reduced to 5 after heavy fighting, converged on the largest hegemony dreadnought. But as they approached, Marcus realized the enemy commander had the same idea in reverse. "They're targeting us," the tactical officer announced with barely controlled panic. "All remaining hegemony ships are focusing fire on the Terra Nova." Marcus looked at Zara, still linked to the bio-interface. Her eyes closed in concentration as she tried to coordinate their defense against impossible odds. Velana stood beside her daughter, one hand on the console, adding her own energy to the network. "There's too many of them," Velana said through gritted teeth. "Even with our abilities, we can't deflect that much concentrated firepower." That was when Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Then we don't deflect it," he said calmly. "We use it." He moved to the navigation console, his fingers flying over the controls as he programmed a new course. "Zara, can you channel bioenergy into our hull instead of our weapons?" "Yes, but that won't protect us from their weapons. It's not meant to." Marcus completed his calculations and looked up at the two Cathera women. "Trust me." The Terra Nova suddenly accelerated directly toward the hegemony flagship, its hull beginning to glow with the same blue-white energy that had been disrupting enemy shields. The hegemony ships, confused by the apparently suicidal maneuver, increased their rate of fire. But instead of being destroyed, the Terra Nova seemed to absorb the energy. The biofield around its hull converted the incoming weapon blasts into additional power, feeding it back into Zara's abilities. "Ramming speed," Marcus ordered calmly. The hegemony commander, realizing too late what was happening, tried to order evasive maneuvers, but the Terra Nova, powered by its own attackers' weapons and guided by impossible alien intuition, was no longer bound by normal physics. At the last moment, just as collision seemed inevitable, Zara released all the stored energy at once. The bioenergy blast, amplified by the absorbed weapon fire from 11 hegemony ships, tore through the flagship's hull like tissue paper. The massive dreadnought simply came apart, its destruction so complete that there was barely debris left behind. The remaining hegemony ships, faced with an enemy that could turn their own weapons against them and witnessing the impossible destruction of their flagship, did what Marcus had hoped they would do. They ran. "This is Hegemony War Fleet Designation 77 Alpha," came the transmission as the alien ships began retreating toward the edge of the system. "Operation is postponed. We will report these new developments to High Command." As the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, Marcus caught Zara as she collapsed. The bio-interface had finally overwhelmed her system, and she lay unconscious in his arms, barely breathing. "She'll be all right," Velana said quietly, though Marcus could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "The energy drain was severe, but she's strong, stronger than I expected." 3 days later, Zara woke up in the colony's medical center. Marcus was asleep in the chair beside her bed, and Velana stood at the window, looking out at the recovery efforts taking place across the colony. "How long?" Zara asked, her voice hoarse. 3 days, Velana replied without turning around. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. The medical staff wasn't sure you would wake up at all." Marcus stirred at the sound of her voice, then sat up quickly when he realized she was awake. "Zara, how do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a starship," she admitted with a weak smile. "But alive. Did we win?" "We won," Marcus confirmed. "The hegemony fleet retreated. Word is already spreading through their territory that the Cathara have new allies, new capabilities. They might think twice before hunting your people again." Velana finally turned from the window. "You saved both our peoples today. The scattered Cathara communities will hear about this victory, and it will give them hope. But you also showed me something I hadn't expected." "What's that?" Zara asked. "That perhaps duty and choice don't have to be enemies." Velana moved closer to the bed. "I came here believing I knew what was best for you, what you owed to our people. But today I saw that the human who raised you taught you something our culture had forgotten. Which is? That true leadership comes not from following ancient traditions, but from choosing to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The scattered Cathara need a leader, yes, but they need one who understands that family can be chosen, that different species can work together, that survival sometimes requires embracing change. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. What are you saying? Velana looked directly at him. I'm saying that my daughter has two families now, and both have helped make her who she is. If she chooses to take on the role of matriarch, perhaps it would be better done from here, as a bridge between human and Cathara cultures. Zara struggled to sit up, her eyes wide. You mean I don't have to choose? I can be both human and Cathara? You already are both, Velana said simply. The question is whether the rest of us are wise enough to learn from your example. Marcus reached out and took Zara's hand, marveling at how much his adopted daughter had grown since he first found her in that wrecked ship 16 years ago. She had become exactly what he had always hoped, a bridge between worlds, a proof that different species could not just coexist, but become family. So what happens now? He asked. Zara smiled, the expression lighting up her pale blue features. Now we rebuild, both the colony and the Cathara communities. We show everyone that families come in all shapes and sizes, and that sometimes the best way to honor your heritage is to expand it. Velana nodded slowly. I will remain here for a time, to help coordinate with the scattered communities, and to learn from both of you about these human concepts of choice and love. And I'll keep being exactly what I've always been, Zara said, squeezing Marcus's hand. Your daughter, her daughter, and myself, all at the same time. Marcus looked out the window at the colony, busily repairing the damage from the battle. Workers from a dozen species labored side by side, human and alien technologies being integrated in ways that made both stronger than they had been alone. It wasn't the ending he had expected when that scared little girl had first trusted him in a damaged alien ship, but it was better than any ending he could have imagined. Some families were born, some were made, and some, like theirs, grew to encompass entire civilizations. The future was uncertain, as futures always were, but it would be faced together by a family that spanned the stars and proved that love could transcend any boundary the universe chose to create. 6 months later, the first interspecies cultural exchange program began on Terra Nova. Cathara children learned human customs, while human children discovered the beauty of alien art and music. At the center of it all, matriarch Zara Chenvel-Ana worked tirelessly to build bridges between worlds, guided by the wisdom of two mothers and the love of two fathers she had chosen along the way. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and sometimes, Marcus thought, as he watched his daughter teaching human children to sing in Cathara harmonies, the greatest wonder of all was the simple act of choosing to care for someone who needed a family. That choice, made in the wreckage of a dying ship 16 years ago, had grown into something that would reshape the relationships between species for generations to come. And it had all started with one simple truth. Love recognizes no boundaries, acknowledges no limits, and creates families wherever hearts choose to call someplace home.